Good morning. It's the day after Rosh Hashanah. Today is a fast day called the Fast of Gedalya. Gedalya was a good man with good intentions. He wanted that the Jewish people should continue to live in the land of Israel even after the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians. And he was making an arrangement with the Babylonians who are in Israel now, ruling over the country, to allow the Jewish people to continue to live in Israel under their rulership. Gedalya was very close with Jeremiah the prophet. Jeremiah the prophet, he was persecuted by the kings of Israel for his words of truth. And he was imprisoned by the kings of Israel, Manasseh, and the kings of Israel persecuted the prophets. And Gedalya had very good intentions. Jeremiah was a prophet of truth. Nevertheless, there was a man, Netanyahu, who was a descendant of the kings of Israel, and they did not look very favorably at what Gedalya wanted to do. And it was a sad story. They went to where Gedalya was living. Gedalya, a very righteous Jewish man, and they assassinated Gedalya to interfere with his plans for a settlement of the Jewish people in Israel under the rule of the Babylonians. Jeremiah was also with Gedalya, but they would not touch Jeremiah because of fear of Nebuchadnezzar, that he had released Jeremiah from prison. This story has a teaching, and to understand the meaning of this story, we have to turn the books back to the first pages of the Bible, Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Adam was the most perfect of men, but in Adam there was also imperfection, which caused him to sin. He had two sides. He had male and female. The male side being the side of selflessness, but he was not perfect. He was close to perfection. Created by the Word of God, the Zohar teaches that there are various levels of spirituality, and there are various worlds of creation, one higher than the other, each level more perfect than the other, until we reach the highest level of perfection, where God and his name are one. In each of the lower levels, there is man. In each level, there is more perfection, until the level of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, one step above the world that we know, called the earth. God said in the beginning, says in the Torah, the first verse, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the heavens there is perfection. God is the most perfect, the creator of the universe. And he created also the earth. That is, each level, as it descends from heaven, has in it earth, has in it man. Earth is woman, man is heaven, until till that level called the Garden of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. And the level that we know today, which is the earth that we know, the earth that we love. In the Psalms it says, Hashemayim Shemayim LaHashem, Va'aretz B'nei Adam. The heavens are for God, and the earth is for man. Adam was not perfect, or he was perfectly imperfect, because it was created by God, who is perfect. And the story in the Bible is that Adam and Eve, in the beginning, they were united back to front. Achar b'kedem satani. They couldn't do any harm. They were connected, but they couldn't see each other. They wouldn't be able to look at each other back to back. God separated them, and then they saw each other, and then they fell in love with each other, and they were free. And they made love. And from them were created Cain, the first child, and then Abel, the second child. Cain was a hunter, the firstborn, and Abel was a more spiritual person. His name is called Abel, but in Hebrew it's Hevel, meaning breath, very spiritual. Cain, physical. Each one made an offering to God. And God favored the offering of Abel over the offering of Cain. God, we learn from this, has favorites. He chooses. He chose the offering of Abel over the offering of Cain. Cain became jealous, and he killed Abel. We learn from this story an important lesson. Abel, he was closer to truth than Cain. He was on a higher spiritual level, a level of prophecy. God favored his offering over the offering of Cain. Cain also made a sacrifice to God. He was not completely evil. God chose the offering of Abel over the offering of Cain. Abel was more righteous, more spiritual. Nevertheless, God allowed Cain to kill him. From this we have a very important lesson. Adam was completely selfless in the Garden of Eden. And Abel, he was selfless. Both of them were punished. Adam had to die after he sinned, and he caused his sin brought death into the world. He was selfless, but there is what's called the initial sin, and he is blamed for it. And Abel gave a beautiful offering to God, and his offering was, God favored his offering over Cain, and God let Cain kill him. So we see from this that there is no reward for righteousness in this world. The reward for righteousness is in the next world, the afterlife, or in the revival of the dead. Adam's reward will come at the revival of the dead. And the reward for Abel's gift will come at the revival of the dead. So Gedalya, intentions were all good. He was connected to Jeremiah the prophet. A great prophet, a man of truth. And he had followed the advice of Jeremiah the prophet to do what he wanted to do. Consulted Jeremiah the prophet. Nevertheless, just like Cain killed Abel, so Netanya, from the king, descended from the kings of Israel, killed Gedalya. There's no reward in this world. If you want to be righteous, go ahead and be righteous. If you want to represent truth, go ahead and represent truth in this world. But don't look for a reward for it. The reward will come through the resurrection. The perfection of Adam was that Adam was one with God in the Garden of Eden. But when he sinned, he was no longer one with God. Adam and Eve went out into the world to build a dwelling place for God in the world. And to build a dwelling place in the world for God, in a world where man is not perfect. The world needed religion. And God brought religion into the world at Mount Sinai. And he gave religion to the Jewish people, a family of the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, 3 holy saints, and Moses gave to the family of Israel, Bnei Israel, the Torah, the law of the Jewish people, the religion of the Jewish people, that they should be in this world a nation representing God. The Torah which Moses gave to the Jewish people encouraged the Jewish people to build a nation, continue to build their nation through building families connected to the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. In the law of Moses given to the Jewish people was suppressed universality. Universality is represented by Abel. Universality is a level of spirituality which God favored at that time. He accepted the spirituality of Abel, which is universality. He accepted it over the offering of Cain. He also made a sacrifice. But his sacrifice was not loved by God like the sacrifice of Abel. There are holy saints that have come into the world seeking perfection, selflessness, breaking off from the establishments of spirituality in the world, which are the religions that have been established in the world. And these saints have been excommunicated and have even been sometimes killed, like Gedalya killed, like Netanya killed Gedalya, and Cain killed Abel. Netanya, he was from the religious establishment that was left over from the kings of Israel in the time of the first temple. And Gedalya was a rebel in his eyes, to want to make peace with the Babylonians. We're fasting today because one Jew killed another Jew. A Jew who was connected to Jeremiah the prophet, a holy Jew. We see today very clearly that there is a conflict between the establishment and those that are individual. We see it in the way the establishment has decided that the way to get out of the plague of the coronavirus is through the vaccine. And that's what the establishment wants, to vaccinate the whole world. There is a break-off from the establishment, which is called American Frontline Doctors, led by a Dr. Simone Gold, that they disagree. They feel that there should be, there are medicines, antiviral medicines, that should be employed, and not to only depend upon vaccines. Another doctor called Dr. Zelenko, he discovered that antivirals were effective when used with zinc to prevent hospitalizations. Nevertheless, in Israel and in the world, they're going ahead with the suppressing the one side for the other side. Vaccines, and this is the way to get out of the plague. So let's not make a judgment, but let's relate it to the past of Gedalya. That Gedalya was breaking off from the mainstream, which is the kingships and the kings of Israel, to establish to make a settlement of the Jewish people in Israel similar to a democracy. The kingship of Israel was a theocracy, and they stopped him. Abel was stopped. Even though God favored his offering, peace offering, over Cain, God let Cain kill Abel. God let Netanya kill Gedalya. Also, we relate this to a story in Genesis of the sons of Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons, and the sons of Jacob objected to the individuality of Joseph, their brother, and they threw him into a pit. They thought about killing him. But once again, God let them do this. God is the master, the creator of the world, and he has a plan. And in his plan is the resurrection of the dead. And each person has a test in his life, a test of selflessness, to be selfless and to seek truth. But don't expect a reward in this world. There's no reward in this world for the seekers of perfection and truth. The reward comes in the afterlife. So today is the fast of Gedalya. We have this lesson to learn from what happened to Gedalya, and we don't know what will happen with the world as it continues today with Corona and the controversy over vaccines. It brings to light the stories of Cain and Abel, the story of Netanya and Gedalya, the story of Joseph and his brothers follow your conscience. God put religion in the world for a purpose, because the world needs religion. But religion is not the end of spirituality. Religion is the establishment of spirituality in the world. But there's also a place for individuality, universality. But in this place, there is no reward. The reward is that you are doing what you feel is right, and if it's God will favor the offering of Abel, and he favors the pursuit of truth of each and every person to find the unity of God and to which is and his name, which is peace. To love peace, to work for peace, peace between heaven and earth, peace between man and his brother, peace between man and his wife. Peace is the purpose that each person will receive an award for working for peace in the next world. Everyone should have a good year, and God should heal the sick and give food to the needy, and there should be peace on earth, and each person should find within his heart the name peace, which is connected to God, connected to Adam in the Garden of Eden, and connected to the Torah, the law of Moses, and truth.